Gadadari. Jaya Gopinandavallabha Girivardhari. Yasodhanandana Brajanandaranjana Yasodhanandana Brajanandaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Shri Radharanand ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So now the verse number. 23. 23. No. Here. 323.1. Thank you much. That's what I need. Maitreya Uvacha Pitribhyam Prastite Sadvi Patam Ingita Kovida Nityam Paryacharat Pritya Bhavaniva Bhavam Prabham Maitreya Vacha Pitribhyam Prastite Sadvi Patimingita Kovida Nityam Paryacharat Pritya Bhavaniva Bhavam Prabham Maitreya Uvacha Pitribhyam Prastite Sadvi Patimingita Kovida Nityam Paryacharat Pritya Bhavaniva Bhavam Prabhu. Ladies, Maitreya Uvacha. Maitreya said, Pitribhyam, by the parents, Prastite, at the departure, Sadvi, the chaste woman, Patim, her husband, Ingita Kovida, understanding the desires, Nityam, constantly, Paryacharad, she served, Pritya, with great love, Bhavani, the goddess Parvati, Eva, like, Bhavam, Lord Shiva, Prabhum, her Lord. Translation. Maitreya continued, after the departure of her parents, the chaste woman, Devahuti, who could understand the desires of her husband, served him constantly with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, serves her husband. Purport. The specific example of Bhavani is very significant. Bhavani means the wife of Bhava, or Lord Shiva. Bhavani, or Parvati, the daughter of the king of the Himalayas, selected Lord Shiva, who appears to be just like a beggar, as her husband. In spite of her being a princess, she undertook all kinds of tribulations to associate with Lord Shiva, who did not even have a house, but was sitting underneath the trees and passing his time in meditation. Although Bhavani was the daughter of a very great king, she used to serve Lord Shiva just like a poor woman. Similarly, Devahuti was the daughter of an emperor, Swayambhuva Manu, yet she preferred to accept Kardama Muni as her husband. She served him with great love and affection, and she knew how to please him. Therefore, she is designated here as Sadhvi, which means a chaste, faithful wife. Her rare example is the ideal of Vedic civilization. Every woman is expected to be as good and chaste as Devahuti or Bhavani. Today in Hindu society, unmarried girls are still taught to worship Lord Shiva with the idea that they may get husbands like him. Lord Shiva is the ideal husband, not in the sense of riches or sense gratification, but because he's the greatest of all devotees. Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu. Shambhu, or Lord Shiva, is the ideal Vaishnava. He constantly meditates upon Lord Ram and chants Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Shiva has a Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is called the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. Unmarried girls worship Lord Shiva so that they can expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as he. The girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich and very opulent for material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband, because she renders him service. The reciprocation of service and love between husband and wife is the ideal of a householder's life. Om Jnanatimmarandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Shakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is said, Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanta, that one should follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans, of the great personalities. The Bhagavatam is describing these personalities, and it describes Swayambhur, which refers to the self-born Lord Brahma. It describes Lord Shiva. it describes Manu, Swayambhuva Manu. All these personalities are great Mahajans, great examples, great role models, and the principle of following them is described as sato vritti, or sato vritti means to follow in the footsteps. It is said anusar, not anukar, or to follow their example, not to imitate. Anusar means that we are on our own level, and on our own level we're trying to, as good as possible, also follow the example of great personalities. But we cannot necessarily do what they are doing. It may take time to actually build up the spiritual strength. But satovritti, following in the footsteps, which indicates we're going the path that they went. And in this way, the transcendental knowledge comes to us in the example of great Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Devahuti is also a great role model. She is described here as Sadhvi, and Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing the point that Devahuti is setting a standard of great dedication, because she is a princess and the daughter of an emperor, and therefore she grew up in great opulence, and yet she is prepared. She is prepared to follow the very austere lifestyle of her husband, the sage Kadamba Muni. That is not so easy. That is not so easy. But she is doing so. The word sadhvi, which is the female version of sadhu, we find sadhu is a person who is dedicated to the absolute truth. It is said that in the verse Tatvak Visargo Janataka Viplavo Yasmin Prati Slokam Abadavati Api Namanyana Tasya Sonkitani Yasrinvanti Grinanti Gayanti Sadhava. The last word there is Sadhava. Sadhava, then, it is said the message of the Bhagavatam is heard by men who are sadhava, who are thoroughly honest, who are dedicated to sat, to the absolute truth. And equally so, sadhvi means a lady who is dedicated to the absolute truth, to the principle of Dharma. So, in this way, Devahuti is one of the great ladies within the universe who is showing the perfect example. The Bhagavatam is a very wonderful narrative of the history of the universe. It is a Purana. It is the Mahapurana. Purana means basically the old or history. Therefore, it is describing us history, but not mundane history. Mundane history may also have its relevance, although one anonymous speaker is quoted as to say, the one thing we learn from history is that we don't learn anything from history, which seems to have some truth to it. History repeats itself, so they say. But this is a different history. This history is the history of the Supreme Lord and his associates, his devotees, the Tadiya. It is said, the history of the Supreme Lord and all that is related to him. And so Devahuti is of great importance because she is related to the Supreme Lord. And Devahuti is most fortunate. No? We have discussed the marriage of Devahuti and in the previous chapter, and now we're entering into the chapter which is called Devahuti's Lamentation, which only comes at the end of the chapter. She is now totally dedicated to following her husband within the marriage, and she does so with great dedication and love. In the end, as the pastime evolves, she bears various children, and one of them is Kapila Dev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in one sense, Devahuti is more fortunate than Kadamba Muni, because Kadamba Muni, he sees his son only for a short time. After there is some exchange with the son, and then he takes sannyas, and that's it. Whereas Devahuti, she has an extensive association with the Supreme Lord. So in this way, Devahuti could be considered to be more fortunate than even her husband, Kadamba Muni, although Kadamba Muni is described as the great saintly personality. But she got the good fortune of prolonged association with the Supreme Lord. So she got so much mercy. And of course, who was she? That question can just come to our mind, just like the cowherd boys, Krita Punja Punja. What piety, what pious activities did these cowherd boys perform that now they are playing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead? That question is raised. Krita Punja Punja. What pious activities have they accrued? In the same way, what pious activities had Devahuti accrued? What personality was she actually? A very saintly personality. Nonetheless, she was also under the influence of the material energy. And as we see in this chapter, she will not only live in the most austere conditions, because at one point it becomes time to produce the result of what marriage is meant to produce, children. Right? And when it comes to that, when it comes to the point of children, then everything is adjusted. Then no longer is she meant to live the life of austerity along with her husband. Then her husband makes many arrangements. Meanwhile, her beauty, the austerities will continue now for quite some time, and her beauty became diminished by this austere lifestyle. But then, before conceiving a child, first her full beauty was restored by the mystic power of her husband. And all that will unfold in this chapter. And from there we understand that in the Bhagavad Gita we find the definition of Dharma Viruddha Bhuttisu Kamusmi Bharatersabha. We find the description of sexual activities according to religious principles. that is described in much more detail in the Manu Samhita. So there, sexuality is to be expressed under religious restrictions. The Garbhadana sanskara is to be performed, and it is an interesting activity, because generally speaking, sexuality in this world is to some extent hidden. It is to some extent hidden. Of course, in Kali Yuga it comes out also in the open, but still, even now, it is a hidden activity. But in the Garbhadana sanskara, when a couple, a husband and wife, were desiring to conceive a child, they would take blessings. The Garbhadana sanskara was a public thing. Before conceiving a child, they would first ask the blessings of the various seniors and so on, and then proceed to conceive the child. Then they would undergo purification, and only after that, right, then they would try to conceive the child at an auspicious time. And basically, we understand that was limited to once a month, which is not an awful lot of interaction between husband and wife. So the culture of Kamusmi Bharatarsabha was and is very much centered around purification. Although sexuality comes in the Grihastha ashram, purification remains the center of it. Now, one interesting question can be raised, and the question is, although it is authorized sexual activity, and although it is taking place with blessings, and although it is within the confines of Dharma, the question may be raised, is it free from lust? Right? What about lust? Lust, the all-devouring sinful enemy in this world. What about that lust? That is the one big problem that we have. What about that lust? I said, well, yes, even that lust is still playing a part in the whole equation, and that is also addressed in this in the upcoming description of the pastime, and that is something to consider. Therefore, it is said, without any sense of criticism or any derogatory attitude, therefore it is mentioned that the Grihastha ashram is a concession. It is a concession because in that ashram one is getting more involved with the material energy, and the potential that it wakes up sleeping dogs, so to use the expression, right, is there. Whereas the brahmachari or the renounced ashrams are more put the dog to sleep. Sleep, oh sleep, doggy, doggy. In this way, oh lust, please sleep. Please sleep. Yes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Because ultimately the goal of human life is prema pumartha mahan, is to develop love of God. The goal of human life is to take advantage of this life to make it the very last life. So in this way, and Bhagavatam leaves no question as to what the goal of life is. And of course, Bhagavatam shows role models of completely transcendental householders. By the time we get to the 10th canto, when we get to Vrindavan and we get to the residents of Vrindavan, each one of them is a great, powerful, transcendental personality, and it really doesn't matter anymore, male, female, or whatever. They are just simply absorbed in service to the Supreme Lord. They are Ragatmika Bhaktas. They are deeply absorbed, the personification, Raga Atmika, the personification of Rag, of attachment to Krishna. So, in this way, we can transcend male and female conditioning in a transcendental process. But it's not easy, as we are finding. It is not easy. It is not that we automatically assume that we are so transcendental, even when we feel transcendental, right? Even when we feel transcendental, and even when we feel not attracted to the opposite sex, we're still very careful in our interaction, never casual, always conscious, because we never think ourselves above the modes of material nature, even if we are, even if we would be above the modes of material nature. Just as it is mentioned in the 11th canto, there is the case of the Avanti Brahmana who took sannyas, and there is a situation with this Avanti Brahmana that in his household life he was a great miser. He is a great miser. And in that way, he upset his entire family. His whole family felt like that he actually denied them the care he could have given them. And so, later on, when he took sannyas, he went through so many reactions, and he went through great difficulty. And it is described how, while he was seated there with his danda absorbed in remembrance of the Supreme Lord. I can't remember if he was chanting or not. Maybe he was. But people would harass him, and they would steal his danda. Right? Now that's a very disturbing thing. Oh, they would steal his danda. I mean, what is going on? They would call him names, and it got to a point where it is described that some people even would spit upon him. More than that, it is said even urinated on him. And then there's a verse of which I never learned the Sanskrit, so bear with me for my laziness. But the verse describes that even if one is blasphemed, even if one is spat upon or urinated upon, still one should keep himself safe on the spiritual platform. So this verse is highlighting the need to keep oneself safe on the spiritual platform. I flagged it years ago as, okay, I'd better take note of this point. As I read it for the first time, I sort of thought, all right, I should indeed make all arrangement to keep myself safe on the spiritual platform. In this regard, there is a verse in the Prema Vivarta from Jagadananda Pandit which says, Krishna Bahirmukahaya Bhogavanchakara Nikit Stamaya Tara Japatiyahaya. That when we are getting involved with the external energy, then we should know that Maya is waiting nearby to slap us down. Now that I also noted when I read that. I said, oh, wait a minute. It doesn't say keep a safe distance from Maya, you might fall down. Now it said she will slap you down. Oui. that was quite a warning from Jagadananda Pandit. Suddenly, Maya is not just there smiling and with temptations. Come. No, thank you, not coming. Come. No. Suddenly it's you come a little closer. What is that actually, Maya, you are holding up there? She slaps you down. Nikatastamaya tara japati ahai. So she waits nikate, very nearby, always ready. Bang. So this is very interesting. So in this way, the topic of lust in all the ashrams is being addressed. And therefore we are staying safe within an ashram. Therefore everyone should choose an ashram within Varna ashram as a means to stay safe. We have devotees who are not married, but they stay in their apartment, right? And they have their whole setup. Now, what are they? Right? They are single. They are not married. So talking, especially from the male perspective, more easy to address. So, are they brahmacharis? No. They count as grihastas without a wife. A man who lives like that, alone, right? So the bachelor in his bachelor flat, right? The bachelor in his bachelor flat counts as a grihasta without a wife. It's very interesting. Very interesting. And to such a person, I would say, choose an ashram. Choose an ashram. Right? Because we have to keep ourselves safe on the spiritual platform. And the ashram is what protects us on the spiritual platform. Any ashram, doesn't matter. That's what these ashrams are about. To provide protection, to keep ourselves safe on the spiritual platform. In Bhagavatam, marriage is also glorified, where it says that the wife is like a fort for a man. Again, it's given from the male perspective, but the wife is like a fort because a man dedicates himself to that one wife and doesn't expand his interest in so many others. In one lecture, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that a woman by nature is inclined to fix herself on one husband. That is actually within her nature. Whereas, he said, the nature of a man is to enjoy every woman. Well, this has created a scenario in the world of unfaithful tendencies. Anyway, unfaithfulness has, or faithless, or whatever, how you say it, unfaithful behavior has been there on the side of the man and the side of the women, obviously. And as the age of Kali is progressing, all these values are just breaking down. But still, there are natural tendencies in the conditioned nature of every living being. And these tendencies are to be regulated. They are to be regulated. The difference between human life and animal life is dharmena hina pasubir sasamana. Without dharma, without regulation, without regulative principles, we're back to animal life. And then in the grip of simply the pushings of the senses, in the grip of lust. Srila Prabhupada also stated that in every of the 8,400,000 species, the living being is afflicted by lust. Think about that. Even a germ, right? Even, yes, in every single one of the species, lust is the center. That's the center of all the driving force in this world. We also see in the when Lord Brahma was creating in the beginning, he was manifesting sons from his mind, and he had a desire to populate the universe, but it didn't work so well. Then he created the first male and female in Manu and Satarupa. And after that, it started the Prajapatis. It started to happen. It started to happen. When sex life came in the picture, then it started to happen. So in this way, we see that Devahuti is the personification of living in a spirit of following Dharma. And I think one important point in the verse is that she was serving her husband also with great love. Not only was she accepting the duty, but she was embracing it in her heart, and within it also found the path of actually developing love. Devahuti was obviously spiritually inclined, right? And that's why she chose a sage for a husband. Right? Obviously, her desire to marry Kadamba Muni was not just like she saw a picture and fell in love and that was it, and then, oh gosh, posted it all over. And no, she was much more substantial. She had a higher goal in her life. Her goal was spiritual, and therefore she wanted a husband of high spiritual credit. So it became Kadamba Muni, and then it was arranged by her father. So the love was not happening all before. Right? It wasn't like there before the marriage there was all the love, and then it had to become a marriage. It had to be, because there was so much love. How could it be avoided? No, not like that. Rather, it developed in a totally different way. The love grew. The love grew as they were both walking the path of Dharma. And in this way, her natural tendency to look for support, to look for shelter, became fulfilled in serving her husband. And in doing so, her love grew in her heart in a deep way. So how different is the approach in these kind of spiritual marriages than the mundane marriages? Sometimes I see in our movement, maybe I sketch a little bit of history from the way I kind of perceived it. That initially, when Srila Prabhupada came, he brought Krishna consciousness into the West, dealt with young people in the West who were not accustomed to any regulative principles. He gradually introduced regulative principles, and then it became a culture in ISKCON. The ISKCON culture was not exactly the same as the Vedic culture as the Bhagavatam culture. It was not necessarily, it didn't have the same maturity. We started to follow principles of varnashram, regulations, but sometimes it was enforced too much, too rigid, without, and then we had a period where after there was quite some enforcement from the leaders. After that, we had a period where the younger leaders themselves had difficulty, and then we got a reaction, and then it went a little bit free form. I saw in one place, when a big leader left, that some people some of his followers, they wanted a new approach to bhakti, and they spoke about free bhakti. And it was like advertised, and there were programs with posters, and it said free bhakti, a new form of bhakti. Now we just associate. We don't need all these restrictions. We just associate and chant Hare Krishna, and we are just, we just associate, and Krishna is there, and it's free bhakti, and it's beautiful. Yeah. It is beautiful for a while, but after a while, it's not only bhakti that is beautiful, but it is also Bhakti Devi Dasi that is beautiful. And then, just using a general name as a general prototype now of how it goes. We can never ignore the power of the material energy. Niketistamaya, nearby is Maya. Anyway, so nowadays maybe the emphasis on regulative principles is a little less than it has been in the past. And maybe in the past it was not perfectly presented, because maybe there was not enough love, maybe there was not enough wisdom, not enough maturity. But now, and maybe there's a tension, a gender tension, and maybe some felt put down and this and that, and not sufficiently protected and cared for. All lack of maturity in applying principles of Dharma, and then as a result, when Dharma is applied immaturely, then people turn away from it. But it would still be wise. It would still be wise to take shelter of ashram Dharma, because we're still dealing with the same enemy, the same one. Niketastamaya. Maya is nearby. And she's not only outside of us, she's also within. She knows, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained, she knows our most intimate, hidden desires. That what no one sees, that what no one knows, Maya knows. Therefore, the ashram dharma is important to keep ourselves safe on the spiritual platform. I'll end with that, and I'll turn it over to all of you, Maharaj. Yes, no, please. I think it would be nice. No, we are very happy with these comments.
Back in the good old days, in Prabhupada's time, at least when I joined, a young man who was not married and not interested really in getting married or professed that, and was living outside the temple, but a devotee. We used to call him a Brahmastra.
All right. Yes.
And they usually explode after a while. But then, you know, you were talking about, who was it? Bharat Maharaj, was it? No. Rishabhadev, who was being mistreated, urinated on, and
At the Avantipur Brahmana in the 11th canto.
Right. So it just made me remember, and actually I had a little look in the meantime. In Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada discusses in the 18th chapter the main characteristics of someone on the level of bhava, ecstatic love. And one of them is pridelessness. And he gives the example of Lal Babu, who was... Anyway, he gives the example. It's right there in Nectar of Devotion. He had been a landlord, and a ruthless landlord, businessman, and had cheated and abused many people severely, and just sort of destroyed the lives of some people financially. But then he became a devotee. And in fact, in Vrindavan, just between sort of Govindaji and Gopishwar, there's the Lal Babu temple. Very nice temple. So then he went to Vrindavan after some time. So anyway, Prabhupada mentions him there, that when he had been the big businessman, landlord, he had tried to cheat everyone, including other big businessmen cheats. But when he became a devotee, then he made it as a sadhana. He made a point of visiting as many of those people as he could and telling them, look, I'm a devotee, and begging, can you please give a donation? So elsewhere, Prabhupada makes the point that Lal Babu, in one case, he went to visit one big businessman, big rascal, who he had cheated before. Somehow, he got the better of the man. But now he went back as a devotee. And humbly, he knocked on the door. The man opened the door, and Lal Babu said, you remember me? I'm Lal Babu. We have this history together. And the man remembered. And Lal Babu said, well, I'm a devotee now. Could you please give a donation? And the man was taken aback. Then he said, okay, I'll give you a donation. He went back into the kitchen. In the kitchen was a wood-burning stove. And he took out a whole bucket of ashes from the stove and poured it over the head of Lal Babu. And Lal Babu said, thank you very much. At least you've started giving. Because before he never gave anything. So he thanked him. At least you've started giving something.
Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj. Ram Vijay. Yeah.
Maharaj, there's a question from Achyuta Gotra Prabhu.
I'm hearing.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. As we see in the past time that Swayambhuva Manu searched for a suitable husband for Devahuti, in our Krishna consciousness movement, should we wait for the Guru to be the one who chooses the husband or wife for the disciples, or disciples should bring forward a suitable partner?
Swayambhuva Manu was the father of Devahuti. And finding a husband for the daughter is the duty of the father. It's not the duty of the spiritual master. Sometimes it is thought that this is the duty of the spiritual master. And sometimes spiritual masters may help in this matter, voluntarily, sometimes. But they have no duty to do so. It is their duty to provide spiritual knowledge and spiritual support, and sometimes for the sake of creating a peaceful material condition, spiritual masters sometimes help to solve material problems. But they have no obligation to do so. And if they do so, we should never take that for granted and never think, that's his duty. Like a spiritual master may help us with marriage, he may help us financially sometimes, and then we may think, oh yes, that's part of the culture. No, it's not. It's not. It is the duty of the parents. And in the absence of the parents, then the temple president. Right? In Srila Prabhupada's model, the temple president was not just an authority, right? An official. He was like a father to the community. And I personally learned this from Radha Govinda Maharaj. When I was still as a vanaprastha, but I was still in white, and I stayed up in the brahmachari ashram in Vrindavan. So early in the morning, at 6 o'clock, someone knocks at my door. I open the door. It's Radha Govinda Maharaj, who, as soon as he sees me, goes down on the ground, offers obeisances. And I'm also down, I go down as well. And next moment, he walked away. Right? I said, the next day, the same thing. Knock, 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 6 o'clock, open the door, there's the Maharaj, offering obeisances. And I again, behind, going down, and he's up first, and he walks away. The third day, I was quick. So the third day, I said, Maharaj, what are you doing? Right? He said, no, it is our duty. It is our duty to offer obeisances. After all, you are our father. And I had never thought of it like that. I really never thought of it like that. That I was his father. It never crossed my mind. It's a typical Indian way of teaching someone a lesson, sort of the indirect approach. Right? But very effective, I must say. It made a deep impression upon me. And it really made me think, my God, I'm supposed to be a father to all these devotees in the ashram. So that's more the approach. The temple president is like our father, and we should have that relationship, mutual, of taking shelter. Not only like that he's the one who tells us what we can do and what we cannot do, but he also helps us in our personal needs and so on. Ideally speaking. And yeah. Anyway, we can always turn to our spiritual master if we need any support. He is there to hear, and he's there to help us in whatever way he can. That's also there. Okay, yeah. You choose. She's closer, it's easier.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I was wondering, is there a point to marriage without children?
Is there a point to marriage without children? Yes, of course, there is a point. There is a point. children may or may not come. That's not something that one can control. And again, in the age of Kali, also our physical strength goes down, so childless marriages are also more common. But one should definitely, once one gets married, then one should try to conceive a child. Not say, no, we decided not to. Of course, some people, all kinds of marriages take place. And some people, they marry at a vanaprastha age. So then they start their marriage practically as vanaprasthas. Yeah? That's another story. But normally, marriage is happening when one is young, and then one should try and have children in the Grihastha ashram. And then if they come, then deal with it. And if they don't come, deal with that also. Then such a marriage still has a value. It still has the protective value of regulating lusty desire. It still has all those benefits. So yes, there's always benefits, that even when there are no children. But once one becomes a grihastha, then by dharma one should try to have children. That element is there.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you were speaking about like keeping oneself safe on the spiritual platform, and one of that protective measures could be like the varnashram system. I was wondering, like, keeping oneself safe even within that varnashram system. Of course, Maya can still infiltrate. So, how do we like remain equipoised despite the infiltration that may come in any situation that we may be placed in?
Okay, because this particular pastime is dealing with the marriage of Devahuti. I focused on the ashram situation, and today I didn't even say Varna ashram, I said ashram dharma. I didn't say Varna ashram dharma, I focused on ashram very much. But obviously Varna ashram without devotional service is not considered to be very valuable. It has to be sansiddhir haritosanam, and otherwise it is sama evi kevalam, otherwise it's simply a waste of time. So Varna ashram is a secondary means of controlling and regulating lust. The spiritual process of devotional service is the only means by which we can rise above the affliction of lust and envy. There's no other way that the six enemies, there's more, like, can be overcome. This is devotional service. Therefore, the core of our life is devotional service. Then the external support structure is taking shelter of an ashram. But it's very important, that external support structure. So I emphasized it today very much. We should not underestimate it. Even for even ladies, right, who are recommended to be married, because within the psyche there is that sense of looking for a person to follow, and looking for this vow that Devahuti followed of following her husband was natural. It wasn't an unnatural imposition on her mind. So that's why for ladies it is generally recommended to be married, but if not, then they would also require a very strong spiritual environment in devotional service and so on to sustain that. Otherwise, without devotional service, we cannot sustain even the restrictions of ashram. That will not be possible. Currently, there is our present level in the material world of uncontrolled interaction with the three modes of material nature and affliction of lust. And then there's Varna Ashram, which is a step up. It is regulated behavior. It tries to bring us to the mode of goodness. But unless there is the substance of devotional service in the core of it, it cannot be maintained. Then even the qualities of goodness cannot be maintained. The chariot of the mind will take us away again. So only devotional service. Ki chit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agam dunvanti kartsya niharam eva bhaskara. Only devotional service can take away the root of material desire. Nothing else. You can regulate material desire, but it can never take away the root, but devotional service can. So therefore, devotional service as much as possible, from morning to night. And even while we're sleeping, we can dream of Krishna. So Prabhupada says, read Krishna book before taking rest. Then we can dream of Krishna. Okay, I'll end. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam.